moved into what I believed was my forever home, a grand, historic house nestled along the quiet stretch of Brownsville Road, just outside Pittsburgh. It had everything: antique charm, towering oak trees, a wraparound porch with columns that felt like they belonged in a painting. I remember standing on that front lawn the day we moved in, watching my kids run through the grass while my wife admired the old brickwork. It felt like the American dream. But even on that first day, something felt strange. The air inside was dense, heavy in a way that didn't match the fresh fall breeze outside, and the silent sight wasn't peaceful. It was tense, like the house itself was holding its breath. At first, it was just small, dismissible things. Light bulbs bursting in rooms that hadn't been touched, cold spots that lingered even when the heat was blasting. Doors creaking open, despite being firmly shut. I chalked it up to the quirks of an old house. But things escalated quickly. One evening, as I was reading in the living room, I heard a sharp knock on the basement door. When I opened it, nothing. Just the dark, narrow stairs leading into the pitch-black basement. That night, I heard it again, and again the next night. Then came the sounds. At first, faint, like someone dragging a chair across the floor beneath us. But then they turned into whispers, moaning, crying, then screaming. It wasn't human, and it was always coming from the basement. My kids became restless. They stopped sleeping through the night, complaining of nightmares and hearing voices in the walls. My youngest began wetting the bed against something he hadn't done in years. My wife, once vibrant and talkative, became withdrawn. She stopped smiling. She barely spoke. One night, I woke to her crying silently in bed, her back turned to me. When I reached out, she winced. That's when I saw them, 3 long, jagged scratches running down her back, as if something had clawed her in her sleep. We had no pets. A few nights later, I was standing in the hallway when I heard my name whispered from behind me. "David." I turned. No one. But the voice, it was mine. It was my voice calling me from the basement. That's when I started documenting everything. I kept a log of every incident, no matter how small. I installed cameras, set up audio recorders. Most people, including my friends, thought I was losing it. But then a local priest visited. He walked into the house and within 5 minutes asked me if we had a crucifix. He said he could feel something clinging to the walls. Over the next 2 years, we had 3 exorcisms. I placed crucifixes in every room, lined every window with salt, sprayed holy water on every wall until the plaster began to discolor. And yet, it got worse. The most horrifying moment came one winter night. I was in the kitchen when I noticed a rancid smell like rotting meat and sulfur. I followed it down to the basement. The walls were wet. At first, I thought it was water damage, but when I touched the black sludge oozing from the bricks, it was warm, and it moved, almost like it was alive. I fell into a dark spiral after that. I started dreaming of things I couldn't explain, shadowy figures standing over my bed, women crying, children screaming. I'd wake up drenched in sweat. I felt like I was being hunted. Eventually, we fled the house. We left furniture behind. I wrote a book, yes, but not to capitalize on the horror, to warn others, to put it somewhere outside of me. But even now, when I drive down Brownsville Road, I can't look at it. That house still sits there, quiet, unchanged, like a predator waiting. Because whatever was in that house never left. This story wasn't mine originally, but it left a mark on me deeper than most of my own encounters. I've walked those halls. I've stood in those rooms, and I've felt what lingers there, waiting. The house stands in Cheltenham, England quiet, upper middle-class suburb with tree-lined streets and Georgian architecture. You'd never guess what lurks behind those brick walls. From the outside, the house is stately, even inviting. Ivy crawls up the facade, large windows catch the light just right. But the moment you step in, the air thickens. Every footstep feels louder than it should, and there's a strange stillness that clings to your skin like damp fog. The haunting began in the late 1800s. A family moved in, a well-to-do couple and their 3 daughters. They wanted a fresh start, but instead they were introduced to her. They called her the Woman in Black. She didn't storm in with chaos. She arrived quietly, first seen gliding across the upstairs landing late at night, veiled, completely silent. Her long black dress flowed behind her like it was floating in water. No footsteps, no words, just the presence of someone who didn't belong, and yet somehow did. Over time, more and more people saw her, the family's guests, neighbors passing on the street. One man delivering coal swore he saw a pale woman staring out the upstairs window. But when he rang the bell to warn the family someone had broken in, no one was there. The family checked the window, it was locked from the inside. Eventually, the sightings couldn't be dismissed. 17 different individuals over 2 decades documented their encounters with her. Some described her as elegant, with a posture too perfect to be living. Others said her veil shimmered, as if wet. One woman swore she made eye contact through the veil and said her eyes were not human at all, but black, deep, and endless like wells. The most chilling part? No one ever heard her speak. Not a breath, not a whisper. Just her silent drifting through the hallways, and that crushing sense of sorrow she brought with her. People said the house made them feel things: deep sadness, anxiety, dread. Not because of what she did, but because of what she was. The family eventually left, not because she harmed them, but because they couldn't take the emotional toll anymore. Their daughters grew pale and quiet. One stopped speaking altogether. Visitors refused to come inside. The house developed a reputation, and over time was passed from owner to owner, each staying shorter than the last. The Society for Psychical Research, the world's oldest organization for studying the paranormal, investigated the house thoroughly. They recorded temperature shifts, electromagnetic fluctuations, even unexplained photographs where faint outlines of a veiled figure appeared in doorways. They concluded it was one of the most credible hauntings ever documented. When I first visited, it was for research. I wasn't expecting to feel anything. I'd been to dozens of so-called haunted locations. Most were theatrical. But this house was different. From the second I crossed the threshold, I felt like I was being watched. The air was motionless, unnatural. There were no creaks, no wind, no distant traffic, just silence. I explored the second floor, the hallway where most sightings occurred. The moment I turned the corner near the master bedroom, my chest tightened, my breath caught. I didn't see her, but I knew something was behind me. I turned slowly, expecting to catch a shadow, a trick of the light, but there was nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of weight, like the air was pressing down, like I was being mourned by something I couldn't see. The guide who accompanied me, an elderly man who'd lived in Cheltenham all his life, refused to go upstairs. He said he'd been in the house once, 30 years ago, only once. He told me she knows who she wants to see. I didn't stay long, maybe 20 minutes, but as I was leaving, I glanced back, just one seat, the upstairs window. The curtain moved. Not with the wind. There was no wind that day. It parted, like someone was looking out. Behind the glass, I saw it, just for a second. A silhouette, female, still, watching. I turned and walked away without saying a word. To this day, I don't know what her story is. Some say she was a widow, grieving a lost child. Others claim she was a victim of betrayal, locked away and forgotten. Whatever the truth is, she doesn't seem angry, but she's not at rest either. That house still stands, people live there, but never for long, and no one sleeps well. Because in the quiet hours of the night, when the world goes still, she walks. This happened in New Delhi, not some remote village, not a crumbling colonial ruin. This was a modern apartment, tucked inside a dense urban sprawl where tradition and technology coexist awkwardly. I was part of a small team of investigators, 3 of us, experienced in what most people would call fringe work. We weren't ghost hunters. We didn't wear matching vests or carry proton packs. We were researchers. We dealt with anomalies that slipped through the cracks of logic and stayed just long enough to disturb lives. And this case still keeps me up at night. We were contacted by a family in East Delhi, middle class, educated, not the type to cry ghost at every flicker of light. They were desperate. The mother barely made it through the phone call. Her voice cracked when she said, "We think it's the doll." At first we didn't take it seriously. I've heard of dolls moving, dolls crying, dolls setting off EMF spikes, but it's usually nonsense or overactive imaginations. But something in her voice, something trembling and hollow, made me say yes. When we arrived, the apartment looked normal, lived in, but clean. A father, mother, and an 8-year-old girl named Rito. She'd passed away 6 months earlier. They didn't say how at first. The grief was too fresh, too raw. The doll was placed on a cushion in Ria's room. Pink dress, plastic smile, the kind of toy you'd see in any department store. But its eyes, they weren't black. They were grey, cloudy. Like they'd been rubbed too much. The father said no one had touched the doll since the funeral. No one dared. It began with noises, doors slamming, lights flickering during full power, the television switching on at night, playing static. The mother swore the doll moved positions during the night, even when the door was locked from the outside. I was skeptical, until the first night we stayed. We set up cameras in every room, audio recorders, salt lines. We even used religious protections from multiple faiths, Hindu, Christian, Islamic, just to cover all bases. That night, nothing happened. But the second night, everything changed. I was asleep in the guest room when I felt a burning pain on my forearm. I thought it was a mosquito bite, until I turned on the light. It was a bite mark. Human, small, like a child's. I rushed into the living room where my colleague Aaron was sleeping. He was sitting upright on the couch, eyes open but glassy. He was murmuring. At first I thought he was having a nightmare, but the words weren't English, and they weren't Hindi either. He was speaking in Bengali. Fluent, rhythmic sentences, but Aaron doesn't know Bengali. He's from Gujarat. He barely knows how to say hello in any other language. We played the recording back later. The voice wasn't his. The accent, the cadence was female, young, and it was threatening us. That morning, when we checked the footage, the doll had moved, not in real time, just frame by frame. First on the bed, then on the floor, then sitting against the closed door. No one had entered the room. We tried to remove the doll, hoping it would break whatever hold it had. We sealed it in a box, wrapped it with Rudraksha beads, prayed over it. But the next morning it was back, sitting on the bed, staring. We brought in a priest. He was reluctant, said he'd never dealt with an object so charged. He performed a cleansing, recited Sanskrit mantras for over 2 hours. As he reached the final chants, a loud knock echoed through the apartment. 3 knocks, always 3. When he placed the doll in a glass display case and locked it, the air shifted. It felt colder, but lighter, like something had been forced into silence, at least for a while. We left that case in a small basement room of the apartment building's storage facility, but here's the part that still haunts me. 2 weeks later, the building's watchman called the family. He'd gone into the basement to check a fuse box, and when he turned around, the doll was sitting in the hallway outside the locked storage room. He swore it blinked. I haven't gone back since. Aaron refused to work cases for over a year after that, but the family moved. The apartment was never rented again. Locals say they hear laughter coming from the empty unit, some night slight, girlish laughter. As for the doll, no one knows where it is now. But if you ever come across a pink doll in a second-hand shop in Delhi with cloudy grey eyes, don't take it home, no matter how cheap it is. Not every story ends with answers. Some stories just pause. Because when you deal with the paranormal, when you walk the narrow edge between what's explainable and what isn't, you start to realize something most people never want to admit. Not everything is meant to be understood. A house in Pennsylvania that bled darkness into a family's life until it drove them away. A silent woman who walked the halls of a quiet Cheltenham home, leaving sorrow in her wake, but never speaking a word. And a plastic doll in New Delhi that held onto the soul of something angry, something ancient, something still watching. These weren't horror movie sets. These weren't tourist attractions. These were real places, real people, real terror. You might think, that would never happen to me. You lock your doors at night, you keep the lights on, you burn sage when you feel off. But the truth is, if something wants in, it doesn't knock, it just waits. It waits in the corner of your bedroom, just outside your field of vision. It waits in the pause between waking and dreaming. It waits in the silence, after you hear your name whispered when you're alone in your home, or at least you thought you were. And sometimes it waits inside you, because the scariest part isn't that these things exist. It's that they follow. And when you close this video, when you walk away from the screen, part of the story stays with you. Maybe tonight, as you turn off the light, you'll remember the voice from the basement, the shadow in the window, the doll that wouldn't stay put. And if you do, don't look too long into the darkness, because sometimes it looks back.